Wait, before you cast a stone around this topic of prosperity gospel versus prosperity principles, I want you to listen to this whole thing. Again, listen to the entire thing. So in this episode, I'm going to cover the difference. And when you hear prosperity gospel, what does that actually mean? And then how does that differentiate from prosperity principles? And as a Christian, if you are striving to be theologically sound and doctrinally sound, which one is more biblically accurate? And what are the differences between those two? So it's a really important episode. Let's dive in. I have a pastor who is a mentor of mine and actually is a mentor to Rise Up Kings to make sure we're on the right path. And I was having a conversation with him on one of our coaching calls. He says, I've been looking at your social media, but I rarely ever see you talking about prosperity, talking about success, talking about building wealth. He said, why is that? And so I thought about it for a moment and I said, well, I don't want to be seen as a prosperity gospel guy. And so he paused for a moment and he says, okay, let's talk about the difference between prosperity gospel and prosperity principles. But first, Skylar, you have the authority to talk on the topic of prosperity. You've created more prosperity in your faith, family, fitness, and finances than most other human beings have. And you've done it all while following Christ. So you have more authority to talk about Christian prosperity, Christian principles, how to build wealth, how to take care of your body and have incredible health. Like, you are an authority on that topic, yet you're keeping it a secret and talking about all of these other topics, avoiding prosperity. But man, you're really hurting the people that you could be serving by not talking about prosperity, by not talking about how to build wealth, alongside all of the other very important conversations that you're having. And so that was a real hard gut check for me, because as Christians, we can get very confused on prosperity. Like, should we be striving for wealth? Should we be trying to build wealth? Or do we just be happy with exactly where we're at the income that we're at? Like, what does the Bible say about these things? And so that's a topic for another conversation about scarcity and abundance and the specific ways to build prosperity in a faithful way. But in this video, I want to break down what are prosperity principles and what is the prosperity gospel. So the prosperity gospel states that when you are saved, you will then be healthy and wealthy. So when you are saved, when you follow Christ, that automatically guarantees that you will be healthy and wealthy, that you will be blessed in those two categories or even more categories. So that's not true. Just because you follow Jesus does not mean that you are guaranteed wealth and health. Like, I know people that follow Jesus that have died from cancer. I know people that are completely broke. So it's not a direct guarantee to have those things. So what the prosperity gospel is it merges the gospel of Jesus Christ, salvation through grace by faith. It merges that with prosperity. Those are separate topics. You following Christ and now being a child of God is one thing. And the next one is prosperity principles. So prosperity gospel states that when you follow Christ, you will be prosperous, which, as you know, is not accurate. And so where prosperity gospel gets it wrong is there's too much of an emphasis on, hey, follow Christ so you can have a life of blessings. So the blessings then become the reward that people are striving after, which when you realize life's not always all about blessings, many people walk away from God. I'm actually thinking of Kanye right now, right? Following Christ, he has this interview where he says, hey, I prayed and I prayed. God didn't fulfill my prayers. And then he had anger towards him. And I believe that's when he walked away from Christ, was when he realized that God didn't answer the way he wanted them, all of his prayers. So his life was about, hey, Lord, I'm going to follow you all out if you bless me. But the challenge is what happens if you're not blessed in earthly ways, only spiritual ways. If you're not blessed in earthly ways, you may be tempted to walk away from God. So the reward is not blessings when you follow Christ. The reward is Jesus himself. The reward is having a relationship with God. That is the reward when you follow Christ, not blessings and earthly prosperity. So again, the major downside is when you follow Christ for those things, you will be let down because life is not always filled with prosperity and earthly blessings. I hope you're enjoying this video. I'm the founder of Rise Up Kings, the largest faith-based personal development organization in the country. And it's our mission to reach as many people as possible to help them live lives of excellence, all to glorify God. We do this through our content that you're watching now. We do this through our seminars. So if you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Let's get back to the video. However, Prosperity Principles states that in the Bible, there are many principles that talk about prosperity. And if you follow these specific principles, you will live a prosperous life. You have the best chance of living a prosperous life in your faith, with your family, in your fitness, and your health, and then also in your finances. Now, prosperity principles state that the Bible is the source. Like if you want to learn how to live a prosperous life, the Bible is the source. It's not the purpose of the Bible. It is a purpose of the Bible. So there are scriptures throughout the Bible that talk about wealth, that talk about blessings, a massive amount of scriptures. And there's also a lot of scriptures that talk about salvation and the way to heaven and the way to be a child of God. And those are separate, right? They're all in one Bible. However, when we merge these two together, that's where we get prosperity gospel. And so it's important to differentiate. And so a lot of churches that might talk on prosperity, they may not necessarily be talking on prosperity gospel, which is merging those two things together. They might just have a heavy focus on prosperity, which again is another topic. So getting clear on what prosperity gospel is and what prosperity principles are. So I believe in prosperity principles. I believe that the Bible has a list of verses, and I'll share a couple with you, that talk about prosperity and how to be prosperous. One of those is Proverbs 28:20. A faithful man abounds with blessings, but those who hasten to be rich will go unpunished. So if you're faithful, you will be abound with blessings. So Proverbs 4:10 states that a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. So the way to become rich is to be diligent in your efforts. And there's verses spread out through the Bible that talk about prosperity and how to gain biblical, faith-based prosperity, which is what the Christian Business Mentor podcast is all about. How do we build wealth? How do we create prosperity in a way that glorifies God, in a way that is biblical? And if we really look at prosperity gospel, not in the traditional term that people use to kind of slam other prosperity gospelists or churches or pastors, right? Which some of them need to, that's way off. That is an inaccurate doctrine that you will get earthly wealth by becoming a Christian, by following Jesus. There's a lot of people that actually follow biblical principles that are not Christians, and they've built incredible wealth following the principles that are in the Bible. Now, when we think about the gospel, though, the gospel, it's interesting, truly does bring prosperity, but not in the earthly sense, in the heavenly sense. You can have internal and eternal prosperity. Eternal prosperity is we get to spend the rest of our life with Christ once we pass. And we get to spend that life with Christ here on earth. Like that is prosperity. That's true spiritual prosperity comes when we follow the gospel. Earthly prosperity, though, is not guaranteed when you follow the gospel. You will be persecuted. Like life will be difficult, and you may not always have blessings when you follow Christ. And so if we can keep those separated, earthly prosperity, right, not attached to the gospel, spiritual prosperity attached to the gospel, and then prosperity principles, which are from the Bible, you can live those out every single day to create prosperity in each of the four pillars. To live a prosperous life, it takes work, right? It takes diligence. It takes regular effort. It takes learning and growing and developing and becoming the best version of yourself. Now, to follow Jesus, you don't need any of that. To follow him or to be saved by him, that's all through grace and through faith. However, if you want to live an abundant life and you want to live a prosperous life, man, that's going to take some freaking work. It's going to take a grind at times. Like you're going to have to lean into God's power to give you the strength to go do these things. Like it's a daily effort of really doing your best to eat healthy so your body stays healthy, right? To learn wealth principles so you can build wealth. And remember, that's not what life is all about, though. However, life can be even more impactful when you live a life where there's some level of prosperity, either in your health or with your wealth. So I want to challenge you to continue to make Jesus your number one priority, him first, and living an abundant life is after that, but he is always number one. Your relationship with Christ is number one. However, it is not a bad thing to pursue and to desire and to want to live a prosperous life.